My name is Ranger Kabiri. For 15 years, I've walked the forests of Omu Aran in Kwara State. I've tracked poachers, guided lost travelers, and listened to the silence that most men never hear. But nothing I've seen in all those years comes close to what I'm about to share with you now. This is not a legend. It is not a fireside tale. It is testimony. And if you keep listening, you may begin to feel what I felt that night, when the silence itself felt alive. The first voice you heard belongs to Elder Adekemi Olorunwa. She's 93 years old, the last in her line to hold the oldest stories of our people. She does not speak often, and when she does, it is not for entertainment. It is for survival. The old stories aren't stories, they're instructions, and those who ignore them don't come back. That was her warning. I recorded those words only once, the night she finally broke tribal silence. The way her voice shook, the way the firelight trembled in her eyes. I knew then this was no parable. In that moment, I thought of the missing. The walls of the Rangers' outpost are covered in their faces, young men with strong smiles, girls who had gone into the forest to fetch firewood, hunters who thought they knew the trails better than anyone. Their families still wait. Their shoes and tools are sometimes found in shallow streams, their radios left on, batteries drained, but never their bodies. When you stand in those woods, surrounded by trees older than memory, the air carries something heavy. It is not the weight of history, it is the weight of watching, the sense that something unseen is measuring every step you take. I've felt it, and if you listen closely now, in this story, you will feel it too. There are nights when the forest falls into a silence so complete, you can hear your own heartbeat echo. No insects, no rustle of leaves, no wind, just emptiness. And in that emptiness, sometimes you hear a sound that should not be there. Footsteps, breathing, your own name spoken in a voice that does not belong. When Elder Adekemi broke her silence, she wasn't only giving me words, she was handing me a burden. Tell them, she said. Tell those outside what we have kept inside, because the pact is failing. So if you're here, if you're listening, understand, this is just the beginning. What you're about to uncover will change the way you look at the woods, at the dark, at the silence around you tonight. Stay with me. Subscribe to MindFuel, because this isn't the kind of story you hear once and walk away from. This is the kind of story that follows you. And the next time you hear your name whispered in the dark, you'll remember this warning. The land they call home is older than maps. A stretch of canyons, deep woods, and ridges that rise like the backs of sleeping giants. To the casual outsider, it's wilderness, empty space. But to those born here, the land is not empty. It is occupied. It is alive. When travelers pass through, they see beauty. Rolling mountains, rivers that glint in the dusk, fields that stretch forever. They say it feels untouched, untamed. But they don't see what the elders see. They don't hear what the silence holds. The reservation sits at the edge of these forests, built of small homes, weathered fences, dirt paths that twist between them. For generations, stories have been told here, not as entertainment, not as bedtime tales, but as warnings. Warnings that outsiders laugh at. They call them folklore. They shrug off the advice, step off the trails, and wander where they are told not to go. And sometimes, they never return. I've walked these woods. I've stood at the border where the elders say not to cross. There are valleys where the air feels thinner, as though it's been emptied of sound. There are ridges where no birds fly, where not even the hawks circle overhead. There are trails that stop abruptly, overgrown, not because no one cut them, but because no one dared to keep them open. The strangest place of all is a hollow they call the Turning Valley. From a distance, it looks like any other grove, green and thick with oak and iroko. But when you stand inside it, you notice something impossible. The trees bend inward, not upward. Their branches twist toward the center, as if the entire forest is leaning closer to listen, or to close you in. The elders avoid that valley, even in daylight. Hunters walk miles around it, choosing harder paths, jagged rocks, thorn-thick brush, anything but stepping through its scent. I sat with him beneath the shade of an ancient tree, its bark darkened with age, its roots twisting like coiled serpents through the soil. Elder Adekemi Olarunwa, the oldest voice left in the village. For years he'd refused to speak plainly, brushing away questions with silence or a wave of the hand. But that night was different. Something in the air pressed him forward. Something recent had forced his hand. His eyes fixed on the ground, his voice low, as though even the earth might be listening. We made a pact with them long before my grandfather's time. The words sat between us like weight. I didn't know who they were. I didn't dare ask, not yet. He lifted his head then, gaze burning, and continued. The forest is not empty. It has rules. We do not say their names. He paused, as though even hinting at them carried risk. A breeze rattled the leaves overhead, but it felt less like weather and more like something shifting closer, unseen. I asked why he was speaking now, after all these years. He turned his head toward the valley, his voice sharper. Because it has begun again. Because silence will not save us anymore. Then he told me the first story. It was decades ago, long before cell phones, long before paved roads led into these hills. A hunter, strong, fearless, the kind who could track an antelope for 3 days and return with meat for the entire village. He vanished during a single afternoon hunt. His family waited. By sunset, they went searching. They found only his rifle, but it was bent, not broken, not rusted with age, bent in half. The barrel curved as though twisted by hands stronger than steel. No blood, no footprints, just the weapon, left like a warning. The elder leaned close, his breath shallow. We knew then it wasn't an accident. The pact had been crossed, and when the pact is broken, they take what they are owed. His words hung heavy, thicker than smoke. I tried to press for answers. Who are they? What are the rules? But he raised a finger, shaking his head. Folklore is safe. The truth isn't. And I understood. The stories the world dismisses as harmless myth are shields, disguises. They are safer than the raw truth because truth carries consequences. The elder's voice grew weaker, but the words carried a weight I could not ignore. He turned his eyes toward the tree line, as if the very act of speaking summoned something closer. What people think they see, he murmured, are not creatures. They are not animals of flesh and bone. They are older. Older than our people. Older than the stones in these hills. They are the land itself. The shadow of it. The memory of what was here before us. He let that linger. A silence stretched long, the kind that presses down on the chest. I could hear the wind shift through the branches overhead, but it sounded wrong. Hollow. Almost metallic, like breath drawn through unseen teeth. Then he told me a story the tribe avoids even in whispers. It was many decades ago. 2 children, cousins, had wandered into the no-go woods during the wet season. They were chasing each other, playing near the stream. By dusk, only one returned. The boy who came back was carried into the village by searchers who found him curled at the base of a tree. His face was pale, his hands trembling. He never spoke again. Not a single word for the rest of his life. They say his eyes were always fixed on the tree lines, even as a grown man. He would not eat outdoors, would not sleep without fire, and if the wind carried a voice through the dark, he wept until morning. The other child was never seen again. Not a shoe, not a scrap of cloth. Just gone. As though the forest had reached out and swallowed him whole. The elder paused in telling it, listening, and in that silence, I thought I heard something faint. The distant echo of drumming, carried on the wind, but irregular, uneven, as if the earth itself was beating out a warning. Then came another sound, a high, brittle rattle, like wind chimes made of bone. It rose and fell, threading through the branches. I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end. The elder leaned closer, his breath shallow, his eyes fixed beyond me. His hand gripped my arm with surprising strength. "If you hear your name whispered in the trees, it is not family calling you." His gaze did not leave the forest. His voice, though faint, was unshakable. "If you answer, you will not return." After that meeting, I could not shake the feeling that something had shifted. The elder's words clung to me like smoke. His warning echoed in the silence of my own room. "If you hear your name whispered in the trees, it is not family calling you." That night, sleep did not come easily. Every sound outside pressed against the walls. The usual chorus of crickets was gone. Instead, the silence felt watchful, as though something waited for me to close my eyes. On the second night, I noticed it. A shadow moving against the far fence, long and uneven, but no wind stirred the grass, no trees swayed. The outline moved, but nothing around it shifted. It lingered there for too long, then vanished when I blinked. The third night, I walked the narrow path behind the outpost. Gravel crunched beneath my boots, and then I heard it. A second set of footsteps, following. Every time I stopped, the sound stopped. When I moved again, it returned, just one pace behind, as if someone walked at my shoulder yet refused to be seen. I began carrying a recorder, telling myself it was proof, that maybe I was only imagining it. But on playback, what I heard was worse. In places where I walked alone, the audio picked up faint, shallow breaths, as if someone stood beside me, exhaling softly, almost in rhythm with my own. By the fourth night, I could not bear it. I returned to the elder. His face was pale, weary, as though he had expected me. I told him what I had seen, what I had heard. He closed his eyes, shook his head, and his words cut like a blade. "They know you heard the story. That is why I never wanted to tell it." He gripped my hand tightly, his voice trembling. "Once you know their rules, once you hear the truth, you are no longer invisible to them. You are marked." And in that instant, the forest outside groaned with the weight of something shifting, as though it had heard us, as though it had been waiting. I found the elder for the last time beneath that same ancient tree, where his ancestors had spoken before him. His voice was weaker now, as though each word cost him more than he could afford. He looked past me, eyes fixed on the forest, and said, "Our silence was a shield. By breaking it, I opened the door. They do not like to be remembered." His hands shook as he spoke, not with age alone, but with fear. The pact was never ours to end. We kept quiet because quiet kept us alive, but now they know I have told you. I asked what would happen. He did not answer. He only turned his head toward the trees, lips pressed tight, as though listening for something I could not hear. That night, the village whispered of a shadow moving through the paths. Dogs barked, then fell silent. By dawn, the elder was gone. They said he passed in his sleep, but no body was shown. His bed was empty. His walking stick leaned against the doorframe, untouched. It felt less like death, and more like he had been taken back into the silence he had betrayed. I returned to my room, shaken, clutching the only evidence I had, the recordings. Hours of conversations, nights of forest walks, fragments of warnings. I played them back again, searching for clarity. And that's when I heard it. In the spaces where my own voice paused, where the elder had spoken, there were new sounds. Faint, layered, just beneath the surface. Breathing at first, then words. My name, whispered again and again. Sometimes behind me, sometimes beside me, sometimes in a voice I thought was my own. The tape kept rolling, even in places I remembered being silent. And in that silence they had spoken. They had followed me here. Now, every time I press play, there are more voices, more layers, as though the recordings are still alive, still listening, still calling. I tell you this not as legend, not as entertainment, but as warning. Because once you've heard their names, once they've whispered yours, Silence will not protect you.